I am told that we are live. Good afternoon, everyone, or perhaps good evening. My name is Marty Hayes. I am the president of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. I'm going to take a couple minutes to give you a little introduction. I haven't done this yet for these, and I imagine there will be probably people who aren't really familiar with the network watching this based upon the clickbait headline that I had our IT guy put up, the problem with insurance, with self-defense insurance. And frankly, it's not really clickbait, it's the truth. There are problems with self-defense insurance that is being offered. But anyway, before we get into that, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am a former police officer. I had about 10 years full-time and another few years part-time until I segued into a full-time firearms instructor with my own school, the Firearms Academy of Seattle. I have worked as an expert witness in many, many homicide court proceedings, and I know homicide is not a crime, but that encompasses all the different types of murder, manslaughter, etc. And of course, now I'm the president of the network. We started this in 2008, so that gives us, I believe, 15 years. I have a law degree, but I am not an attorney. So you can take that for what it's worth. The only difference between me and a bar certified attorney is that they sat down for a couple days and regurgitated what they were taught in law school sufficiently to pass the bar. I could do that if I wanted to, but I really don't want to be an attorney at my late stage of life here. So, but I do have the experience working on the self-defense trials, which I think more than makes up for my non-attorney status. So, but in addition to that, I've taught attorneys nuances of self-defense law, teaming up with Masad Ayub and teaching them through the network, and then also through his company, Masad Ayub Group. So that's my background. You can take it for what it's worth. I do know an awful lot about this subject area, and I am happy to answer questions about this topic and others. And how the questions will work is I have outlined 6 different categories that I'm going to talk about. And after I'm done talking about one of the categories, I'll ask if anybody has any questions. Actually, I'll ask Gila. There she is. It's backwards on my.
It's messing with my mind.
On my monitor here. Mm-hmm. I'll ask Gila. Gila, are there any questions? And she'll tell me, and perhaps we can get them up on the screen. This is our first attempt at this live stream with questions, and so it may not go as smoothly as we like, but it will go. So that's basically where we're at. Now, this topic comes about out of the advice that I hear many, many, many well-intentioned people give. And that's it. They just say, and you need some type of self-defense insurance. Every time I hear that, I say, oh God, no, not that old tripe again. Because there are problems with self-defense insurance. And the companies differ. And so if you don't have the wherewithal to do your research, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. There are 6 points that I want to discuss today, and we're going to get right into them. First of all, let me just say before we do that, I'm basically talking about about a half a dozen companies other than the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. These companies all offer some type of insurance component in their business plan, business model. And so I'm not going to name names. I don't really want to get into that. Although if it's logical to discuss somebody's program that comes in on a question, then I'm not going to shy away from it either. But I don't want to start a YouTube video war. Okay, the first problem with the self-defense insurance companies is in reality, you really don't get to choose your own attorney. They say you do, but some of them actually appoint an attorney for you. Others say that they have the right to choose your attorney, or the right to put the kibosh on your choice of an attorney. Some of them say, yeah, you can choose your attorney as long as the rates are reasonable. And so that's really part of the problem, is that you really don't get to choose your own attorney. Many times you will, if you proffer an attorney's name that you want to use for your legal defense. They will first accept it, I'm sure, and then they will check it out, find out how much they're going to cost, that kind of thing. Run it by the underwriter, which we'll get to in a minute. Make sure that the underwriter is willing to pay their attorney's fees. And so that's how that goes. One of the things that I was adamant about when we started the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network was that I wanted to be able to choose my own attorney, to have my students from the academy be able to choose their own attorneys, and then have the broad spectrum of members be able to choose their own legal team. Part of that is because I didn't want to be responsible for furnishing the attorney. I mean, I can't imagine furnishing an attorney for somebody and having that attorney screw it up and having our member go to jail for the rest of their life. I mean, that would make me feel pretty bad. And so we're not going to be assigning any attorneys. It is up to the member to choose their own attorney. Now, having said that, we do have over 500 attorneys in the network, and at the end of this, we'll actually wrap up with me speaking how we address these 6 points. And so let's move on to the next point. The next point is you don't have any control over your legal defense. I am reminded of a case that I worked on. This was about 2008, maybe 2009. It was the Larry Hickey aggravated assault case in Tucson, Arizona, Pima County, I believe it was. Larry was a firearms instructor. He was hooked up with James Yeager from Tactical Response, and that's how I heard about his case, was through the Tactical Response Network. And Larry had ended up having to shoot and wound. He didn't kill anybody. He shot and wounded 2 out of 3 people who were attacking him. The write-up on it is on our website. But so Larry was being represented actually by the Pima County Public Defender's Office, not the network, because he wasn't a network member. But I wanted to get involved in it anyway, and I was asked to get involved with it, so I did. And during the first trial, there was a nice, sharp-looking fellow sitting in the audience behind the defense side. It's like a wedding. There's usually the prosecution side and the defense side. And he was sitting there for a few days, and finally I asked someone who would know. I says, "Who is this guy? You know, he always comes to court in a suit and jacket." And I was told, well, he's the attorney for the insurance company. The insurance company being Larry's homeowner's insurance, because this situation happened on his property. Larry was being sued for $100,000, and the attorney was here to get a feel for whether or not they should pay off the plaintiffs, the person or persons that he shot, or whether they should fight it. Well, early on, after 2 or 3 days, the attorney vanished. And I said, well, wow. And finds out that then the attorney went home and told his powers to be settle, because you're going to lose you're going to lose the case. So they settled for the maximum of the homeowner's insurance policy, and that was okay, I guess, because that's what insurance companies do. They look at the figures and decide how they can cut their losses the most. So that's what I mean by saying your case really isn't in the fate of you. The insurance company will let me think for a second. How did I want to phrase this? Okay, the insurance company will do whatever they can logically to cut their exposure, meaning how much money they're going to pay. Now, this isn't going to be a real big problem if it's a small case, if the fees are not adding up to $500,000, $1 million. But if it is a large case like this, you may have a problem. Your attorney might not be able to control how he wants I shouldn't be sexist, how he or she wants the case to go. And I already figured out just now that I skipped into heading number 2 without asking if we had any questions on heading number 1. Do we have any questions, Gila?
Well, not necessarily about heading number 1. However, first we have a new member who's joined us. Welcome to him or her, as the case may be. And then we've got another question that goes, do we have any attorneys on now who are part of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network? I don't know who's participating. As watching.
It's danger.
Mm-hmm.
We have over 500 attorneys who are part of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, and I'll talk about that more at the end.
Whether they're on this live chat or not,
Was
who
that
can
what
say?
that meant?
I believe so.
Oh, I thought
Perhaps Danger will tell us more about that question. That's the way I took it.
Okay, I didn't take it that way.
It's another question that doesn't have to do with
now who are part of the network. Okay, I don't know. If there are, maybe they'll chime in.
Well, that might have been what he was looking for, was
Yeah.
to get them on live chat. There is another question. It doesn't pertain to what you're working with. Why don't we hold it for if we have a little time at the end?
Okay. I'm sure we will, because this is going pretty quickly.
Okay.
So, you don't get to choose your own attorney. You're not going to be able to choose if you settle the civil lawsuit or not. So, that's the second problem. There's also a third issue, and that is the hidden term in your insurance product, in your insurance policy, that calls for recoupment. And what that means is that if you end up being found guilty, or you decide to take a plea to a lesser offense to get this thing over with, then you may be on the hook to pay back all of the money the insurance company spent on your defense. And I didn't really learn about this until a couple, 3 years ago. And I said, oh my God, that's another reason why we don't want to be involved with an insurance company. They kept this little secret, they kept this little part of it a secret, They wrote it into the very, very, very fine print to the policies, but now it has been exposed. So, any questions on that part, Gila?
Not on that part. We have someone else who's joined us and late but here. Glad to hear it.
Okay, very good.
That's great.
The next thing I wanted to talk about was the very real possibility that having liability insurance for your act of self-defense will invite someone to sue you. And that is because the plaintiff's attorneys who decide whether or not they want to take the case will look at how much assets, whether or not the individual has very deep pockets. If they have deep pockets, then they say, well, gee, we can go after his $1 million house or his bank accounts or the insurance policy. And so you might be saying, well, so what if I'm sued? That's what I have insurance. Let me run the scenario by you. Let's say that you end up being sued after an act of self-defense. Or maybe, like in Larry's case, the judge on the second trial, because the first one was a hung jury, on the second trial, which ended up in a hung jury, but maybe the judge went ahead and ended the lawsuit, or ended the prosecution, dropped the prosecution. Larry's was a close case, although it was perfectly legitimate, but it engendered a lot of emotion. And so that is why the insurance company, I believe, decided to settle way ahead of time. But what if they hadn't settled? What if they said, nope, we're not going to settle, we're going to sue, or we're going to go ahead and defend this lawsuit. And so they started defending the lawsuit, and Larry ends up being found culpable for negligence, which is a much lesser burden of proof than guilty in a criminal case. And the jury comes back and says, Larry, we think what you did is worth $1 million to the plaintiffs. And Larry turns to the insurance company, and the insurance company says, okay, we'll pay the $100,000. You, Larry, are on the hook for the other $900,000. And that could very well happen in your case, even if you have $1 million of liability insurance. If the award is $2 million, then you're still on the hook for the next $1 million. And that's a crapshoot, how much a jury is going to provide there. Gil, anything?
Yeah, I needed a prompt.
Okay.
All right. First, we've got a member from Ohio who's joined us. Thank you. And then we have another member who's asked, if my attorney does not have any self-defense experience but does have criminal experience, do you advise them?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing. The people involved with the network have a vast amount of self-defense experience. Your criminal attorney, your criminal defense attorney, is going to end up being part of a team. We will bring in perhaps some of our experts, maybe a heavy hitter self-defense attorney, and they will co-counsel. We will make sure that you have an absolute rock solid, ironclad super team to handle your self-defense case. And I can say that because we have a tremendous amount of money, at least we think it's a tremendous amount of money, over $4 million in our legal defense fund, and we're happy to provide the cost for your dream team of self-defense liability or self-defense criminal defense attorneys. So yeah, to answer your question, if you have a good criminal defense attorney, you're 99% of the way there, and we'll make sure that he's up to speed, and most of them are, and if not, we'll get them up to speed pretty quickly. That's one of my jobs for the network is to not handle or manage the case, but to audit the case, make sure that the legal defense is going properly. Gila? I see your finger up.
And here's the next question. Quoting your comment, insurance advice lawsuits. How does ACLDN differ from insurance here? And how does ACLDN not incentivize lawsuits?
Well, because there are no deep pockets with ACLDN. They're not going to be suing us. We didn't do anything. All we're doing is paying for your attorney's fees. We're not desensitizing or de-incentivizing, I guess was the word you're looking for. If you, the respondent in a lawsuit, has a lot of money, then you might consider a broad umbrella policy that all I know is on this point is that insurance invites lawsuits. The first thing that's going to happen is the plaintiff's attorney is going to do an asset search and decide if this person is worth going after. And if they're worth going after, then maybe you should buy a liability insurance policy, knowing full well that you're more likely to be sued if they have this policy. But if they do an asset search and find out that you're worth several $1 million anyway, then I don't know if it's that big of a deal. I'm really talking to the guys who have a 30-year mortgage on their house and they're into it for 10 years and they don't have a whole lot of money saved up yet. So that's really who I'm talking to. Like 99% of the members of the network. Okay. Do we have any more
nothing
questions?
Further.
Okay,
Next
very good.
point.
To go along with the insurance companies charge money to absorb the risk that they're absorbing. If you look at the price that most of the other programs which have $1 million, $2 million liability insurance program tacked on to the criminal liability program or criminal defense program, we're talking $4 or $5. I think one of them's even up to $600 a year, and so that's kind of costly to me. And that's because you have to pay those underwriters. And if a company is charging $500 a year to provide your program for you, then they're probably paying $300 a year just to the insurance company for the underwriting. And they're living off the rest of it. And so it's a high cost. We, the network, are the lowest cost program available. We charge, it's $145 to join.
$150.
$150 to join, and then $105 per year
To renew.
That renewal works out to about 28 cents a day. And there's nobody that even touches us as far as cost effectiveness. So Okay.
Do you want to take a member question?
Yeah, we absolutely.
Not necessarily about that, but Dan, a member from Texas, has asked, is an act of self-defense while in transit through a gun-free zone automatically excluded from coverage?
We had that in our policy. I should
Yes,
say
don't
policy.
say
No,
that.
I'm talking about insurance. Talking like an insurance agent. We had that for quite a while, and then with the Bruin decision, where the Supreme Court of the United States of America, God bless them, said that people have the right to carry guns for self-defense, then we said, you know, I think eventually it's going to hold up that these gun-free zones or even gun-free states are unconstitutional. And while we're not going to provide the legal fees for fighting your gun in a gun-free zone charge, we're not going to disallow any act of self-defense. We're just basically going to ignore any ancillary charges and deal with what's important to us is the justifiable homicide claim. Okay, anything more on your thing?
Nothing at this moment.
Okay, well, I've got another point.
Mm-hmm.
Point number 6. These insurance companies have run the risk of losing their underwriting. If they end up having, say, 2 or 3 cases where the insurance company had to pay out a bunch of money, they will probably find themselves without insurance coverage, no underwriting. I know that of one of the companies that have changed underwriters 2 or 3 times. And I don't know why, but it happens. So if one of these insurance companies loses the underwriter, then they don't have a program to offer you. And I'm sure they're not going to come out and say, hey, you got a big notice here. Right now your benefits aren't any good. No, they're going to sweep it under the rug until they can scurry around and find someone else to underwrite them. So that is part of the problem there. Did the companies tell you that? No, I'm sure they didn't. Question, Gila.
Yeah, we're going to go back to your previous topic.
Good.
Regarding insurance policies inviting lawsuits, is having an umbrella liability policy extending homeowners and auto liability a good thing to have, or perhaps not?
I don't know whether it's a good thing or not, because of, it would be nice to have the coverage to just hand it over to the insurance company and says, deal with this and pay them off if you need to pay them off. But on the other hand, a wrongful death lawsuit is probably going to start at $1 million payout. If a jury finds you wrongfully killed someone, that person's death is going to be worth several $1 million, leaving you on the hook for the balance. And I know one thing, I don't have it. I don't have an umbrella liability insurance policy. I will be responsible for my own acts. I, of course, have homeowners insurance because the home could burn down under no fault of my own. I have automobile insurance because it's required, and I think it's a good idea. But as far as insurance for the intentional tort of murder or manslaughter or assault, that I only am going to really have insurance in the event that I win it in court, remember the recoupment clause, then I don't bother having it. Okay. Do we have any other?
Nothing at this point,
Nothing.
unless you want to go back to the non-topic question. You want
Sure.
to cover that? Oh, okay. This was answered early on. Sorry to put it off while we were talking insurance. LJ has asked, does it matter if I purchase factory defense rounds or reload my own? I'm hearing conflicting things.
I assume that you're talking about rounds for self-defense. And there's an argument that says, well, if you made your own ammunition, then you can be accused of trying to fabricate death killer, super hydrostatic, shock producing, maximum bleeding out, terminal ballistic performance, and that might sway a jury to vote against you. Now, there's a couple of problems with that argument if you're on the prosecution side. One is that if you've got a good defense attorney, he's going to put up a motion in limine to get any discussion of your reloaded ammunition kicked out of court. And secondly, argument could be made that it's responsible to make sure that the ammunition you choose is good quality ammunition, and what better than to go make your own. The biggest problem, though, is that if you need an expert to come in and attempt to recreate the shooting incident, and this is what I have done in most of the cases that I've worked on, is shooting incident reconstruction. If you're going to try to discern the gunshot residue, gunpowder stippling, trajectory, ejection shell casing, ejection patterns, you need to be using the same kind of ammunition that was used in the incident. And I do not believe that there's any judge around that is going to let you make up your own evidence and give it to your expert, because ammunition can be put together, massaged to basically get the desired outcome. For instance, you could put together a 9mm cartridge that was very clean burning, and after, say, about a 6-inch distance between the gun and the human body, there's not going to be any gunpowder stippling. On the other hand, you could put out 9mm ammunition that would make stippling out of 18 inches. And I can do that. I'm an avid reloader. I'm pretty good at it. And I could make any type of stippling test come out any way I wanted if I was in charge of making the ammunition. And so that's the biggest problem, is that you're not going to be able to use the same type of ammunition. I worked on a case in Hawaii once where this was pretty important, and it was a Secret Service agent, I guess it was. And I asked the attorney, I says, hey, what kind of ammunition was used and how can I get some? And the good news is the defendant was a firearms instructor, and he says, I'll have the department send you some of what we use. I said, great, that would work. So I could then testify that, well, this was provided by the department, it's the same exact stuff that was in the gun, and there's no reason to believe it should produce any different results. So that's the biggest problem. And the tremendous cost savings of probably $3 a box probably isn't worth the several hundred, if not thousands of dollars that it would take to try to defeat that argument in court. Yes?
Okay, we're switching topics if you are through with ammunition.
I'm through.
Okay. We have two members asking this. First, Brad in Ohio and Ron. Is there a continuity plan in place for when Mr. Hayes is deceased or otherwise unavailable to answer the phone?
you're looking at the second part, the continuity issue. We are now, both Gila and I have the boots on the ground phone. And so if I'm not available to answer, it goes right to her phone. She answers. And so that's been working out pretty good. As far as a continuity plan, the network is a C Corp with shareholders and shares. And if all of a sudden I was deceased, then the remaining shareholders would take over the network and provide for my replacement. So that's pretty, that's pretty much what's going to happen. I'm not too worried about me not being around for a while. And I'll be candid with you. I'm looking at retiring one of these days. And so we'll be putting together the next phase of the network being run by professionals anyway. So not a problem. Gila, you have another one.
We do. This is a good question. This is from Danger again. Does a living trust provide any asset protection for your family if you become engaged in litigation? Do insurance companies consider your trust assets when calculating payoff limits?
Well, I'm going to make a note here. I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say I don't know. But I'm going to find out, and maybe in our next live stream, we'll answer that question.
No further questions. You're going to have to talk about it now.
Oh, I don't know that. I could make something up like everybody else in the world does.
Nope, don't get to do that.
I don't know. That's a good question. Okay. I said I would approach how the network handles the issues that I brought up, the 6 pieces of the 6 types of problems that I find with insurance. First one was you don't get to choose your own attorney. Well, with the network, you have to choose your attorney. We're not going to just we're not going to force an attorney on you. It's going to have to be your choice. Now, we can suggest attorneys. We have over 500 attorneys nationwide that have agreed to help our members. And we've had very good luck with pairing them up with members in need. If we still can't find a good attorney for you to interview or to help you out right after an incident, then I will get on the phone, or I'll get in the car, I'll drive to PDX, Portland International Airport, and I'll book a flight to your location, and I'll arrive on the ground a few hours later, and we'll go find you an attorney. But the bottom line is, the choice is always yours. We don't make that decision. We can just simply make a good recommendation. One of our cases involved an individual who was being charged with aggravated assault. The prosecution lost the witness, and so when it came down to going to court, they had to drop the case. But they dropped it without prejudice, and a few months later, the witness resurfaced, and so the prosecution charged him again. And by that time, the guy decided he wanted a different attorney, and so we got him a different attorney. He chose, we paid, end of story. Okay. That basically covers the first 2 issues. The recoupment clause of these insurance policies says that you may have to pay back your complete legal defense. And understand that insurance companies are all about the money. And while it behooves them to play along with the program manager at some point, if they're facing having to pay back or pay out $1 million, and they end up having to pay out that $1 million, they're probably going to come after the member for their money back if they can. I mean, have you ever seen an insurance company who wasn't all about the money? I haven't. Talking about insurance inviting lawsuits. The network doesn't have deep pockets, and the network can't be sued. If you don't have deep pockets, then you're pretty much lawsuit proof. And I'm talking about the insurance inviting the lawsuits. And I hope you have a lot of money. Maybe put that money in that trust we're going to find out about. But that's the deep pockets insurance invite lawsuits issue. Insurance is expensive, but the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network is not. 28 cents a day. Actually, I think it's 28.9 or something. Let's call it 30 cents a day to have the peace of mind knowing that if you're ever involved in an incident, that we're going to be there. We're at the end of the line on the phone, and we're going to start your legal defense as quickly as we hang up the phone.
Is that your 6 points?
Nope, I got one more thing. And of course, the insurance companies are all underwritten by some underwriter, which can drop the insurance program pretty much anytime they want. That nobody's going to force this insurance company to continue to underwrite these policies if it's not cost productive for them. But we don't have underwriters. Our strength comes from our legal defense fund, which has $4 million and growing in it. We spend about maybe $100,000 a year for our legal defense fund, and we put a whole lot more than that into it, which is why it keeps growing. And so that is basically a summation of the topic, the problem with self-defense insurance. And I know that there's a lot of slick pressure marketing tactics out there. My biggest recommendation is to read the fine print. And if you're not tracking with what that policy is saying, get some legal help with it. And you may find out that, this isn't for me. So, you got questions?
Yeah, and let's just take them in order. There's been 2 that have come in.
Okay.
CJ wants to know, are there other training videos planned in the near future that you want to tell about?
Oh, yes. There are others planned. No, I don't want to tell about them. Because then I would end up making promises and I might not be able to fulfill those promises. But yeah, we've got a couple other topics that we want to start working on here pretty quickly.
All right. And in addition, we also have monthly interviews with experts that we are very much putting to video these days, so that we keep the video coming. Next question comes.
Hang on, before you ask that,
Okay.
I know one of the things we want to do with this format is to get some of our top level advisory board members on to answer your questions. Masadiu, John Farnham, Tom Givens, these kind of guys. So at some point we're going to announce, come to this live chat and talk to this person. And so we're looking forward to that. Now, your last one, Gil?
Okay. Well, we've had several, so now it's really rolling.
All
Here we
right.
go.
Roll them on in. We got time.
Stephen would like to know, do you know if your attorneys on your list are available for an introductory meeting to see if you are compatible? Also, how do you find one of these attorneys? We started that question in the Attorney Question of the Month column in
Yeah, go ahead
February.
and talk about that a little bit, Keeler.
The February e-journal has the first half of us putting that exact question to our affiliated attorneys. We got what was probably the biggest response to an Attorney Question of the Month that we had ever had. We split it into two portions. So start by looking at the February edition of the online journal. I don't believe we've had responses from every state. We don't enforce we don't force affiliated attorneys to respond. It's all voluntary. But it was an amazing response, and they answer exactly those questions. It was very nice
And how
of them.
do they find out about the attorneys?
Log in. Network members can log in and browse to our affiliates page. There's a drop-down menu that you can select attorneys and kind of slim it down to just the attorneys, and then you also search by your zip code or your city, or if you're going to be visiting, maybe you're going to go hang out with your adult children in Cleveland for a month. You might want to go look up who's there. At any rate, yes, we do make that available to members. We've had a couple of other questions. You want me to push on?
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to get these in order. Does payment of attorney fees go directly between ACLDN and the attorney, or does it go through me?
It does not go through you, because doing so, that would set us up into an indemnification issue. And it would look an awful lot like insurance, and that's the last thing we want to do is look like insurance. And so we will pay the insurance or the attorney directly. Typically what happens is I'll have a discussion with the attorney, find out what the hourly rate is, and if the attorney wants a retainer, and most of them do, they'll say take a $5,000 retainer to work against for their fees, and if they need more money, we'll pay them more. And so that's how it works.
Okay, I want to give a little shout out to Skywalker, who said he did read the fine print, and that's why he joined the network. Thank you, Skywalker.
Good job.
And Stephen Perez is a member, and he thanks us for the link. And I thank our IT director, John, for putting the link up for us. He's much smarter than I am about these things.
John's getting very good at these. I'm pretty impressed.
There's nothing else on the feed.
Nothing else. Okay, I believe we've got another one of these scheduled in a couple weeks. To date, Gila?
Well, I believe the Thursday in a couple of weeks is the 22nd. Let me go do some running on my calendar. I'm sorry. Yes, 4 o'clock Pacific time on Thursday, February 22 is our next scheduled date. Do you have a topic for us, Marty?
Not yet.
Okay.
We will by then. And so we'll see you then, I guess.
All right. Thank you to all of the folks who sent in questions. This was our first time having live questions, and that was very nice. It's a fun format.
Okay, I guess we're done.
All right. Thank you, everyone.